Mr. President, I stand here as one of the two senators from the largest state in the Union to recognize that there is a hole in the heart of America today as we cope with the tragedy of violence on all sides. And I'm working on comprehensive remarks because I'm doing it more in a way for myself, and those are not prepared right now. But right now, I want to send my deepest condolences to those who are suffering, who have lost loved ones, be those loved ones police officers or community members, and for that matter, so many American families who suffer losses because of violence every day. It is critical that we address this issue. And I want to compliment the voices on all sides, the voices of compassion and reason and love. And I hope I could add my voice to their voices. Mr. President, what several of us are doing on another topic is to call attention to the web of denial that is being peddled in our nation by special interests and their quote-unquote think tanks and organizations who are working to undermine science, the science of peer-reviewed climate science. Their goal is to create uncertainty, to delay action on the biggest environmental and public health threat we face today. Climate change is real. Human activities are the cause, the primary cause. The warming planet poses a significant threat to our people and to our environment, and that is not my opinion. I'm the first one to say I'm not a scientist. I rely on the scientists, and 97% of them have said climate change is real and human activity is the primary cause. The level of scientific certainty on man-made climate change is about the same as the consensus among top scientists that cigarettes are deadly. But some of you may remember that up until the late 1990s, the tobacco industry scoffed at the best available science, proving that tobacco is addictive and causes cancer. Now, no one in today's world would argue with that tobacco is addictive and it causes cancer. There was, in the 90s, a campaign of denial, just as there is for climate change now. Year after year, the tobacco industry attacked the science, excuse me, that showed the link between cigarettes and the threat to human health, as well as the Surgeon General's warning that nicotine was as addictive as heroin and cocaine. Let me share a few of the statements made by or on behalf of the tobacco industry. In 1970, Tobacco Institute advertised that scientific finding was wrong that proved a connection between cigarette smoking and lung cancer. They said, quote, "The Tobacco Institute does not, and the public should not, accept these claims at face value." In 1971, Joseph Coleman, chairman of Philip Morris, said, quote, "We do not believe cigarettes are hazardous. We don't accept that." In 1988, a lobbyist for the Tobacco Institute submitted written testimony for a congressional hearing stating, quote, "There is no medical or scientific basis for viewing cigarette smoking as an addiction." The effort to disparage cigarette smoking as an addiction can only detract from our society's attempt to meet its serious drug problem. That was what the cigarette companies said. At congressional hearings in '94, executives from the 7 biggest tobacco companies testified they believed nicotine was not addictive. Do you remember that picture of them swearing to that fact? And a tobacco industry doctor said, quote, "The proposed addiction warning and the assumption upon which it is founded are based neither in science nor fact and will have unintended harmful results," unquote. This is the tobacco company doctor saying if you warn people, it will have unintended harmful results. Sure, for his bosses who are paying his salary, the tobacco companies. In 1998, Walter Merriman, vice president and chief spokesman for the Tobacco Institute, said, quote, "We don't believe it's ever been established that smoking is the cause of disease." Now, the reason that I spend so much time going through that history, that painful history, because a lot of people died of cancer because the tobacco company and their think tanks would not tell the truth to the American people. That's why a lot of people died. At the end of the day, they failed. The tobacco companies failed, but there's so many bodies out there because of their heavily funded propaganda campaign. When the people knew the truth, American smoking dropped from 42% in 1964 to 15% in 2015. And anybody out there who's still addicted, I pray God that they will really get help, because there are very few things where we know cause and effect. We know this cause and effect of smoking. It is not good. Now, here's the thing I want to say today. Investigative reporting has clearly shown that those who led the fight against health warnings on tobacco have been involved in the climate denial movement from the beginning. Just as Big Tobacco denied that smoking was dangerous to people's health, Big Oil and other special interests have tried to undermine scientists' warning about harmful carbon pollution by claiming that climate change does not exist. So you had Big Tobacco spreading the big lie that smoking was non-addictive. They even said at one point it was good for you. And Big Oil telling us there's no climate change, it's a hoax. But if you look at the 97% of scientists, what have they told us we're going to see? Higher temperatures, more extreme weather, severe droughts, increased wildfires, decreasing polar ice, rising sea levels. That is what they said would happen. 97% of the scientists. And guess what? It's happening. Don't take my word for it. Let me give you specifics. 2015 was the hottest year on record. Every month of this year continues to set records. Sea levels are rising many times faster than they have in the last 2,800 years. 2015 wildfire season was the costliest on record, with $1.71 billion spent. California, my fantastic home state, is suffering from its worst drought in modern history. And scientists are predicting mega droughts. Rising temperatures are expected to worsen air quality and threaten public health. The American public sees what is happening and they understand the need to act. 71% of America support the historic Paris Agreement to address climate change by reducing harmful carbon pollution. A March 2016 Gallup poll shows that 64% of Americans, the highest percentage since 2008, are worried about climate change. And here's another thing. Gallup found that between 2009 and 2015, a decline in public concern about climate change was linked to a well-publicized campaign of misinformation about climate science. The fossil fuel industry took a page right out of tobacco companies' playbook, supporting a network of organizations that create a false sense of uncertainty. So let me tell you that I have joined my colleagues on a resolution condemning the effort by the fossil fuel industry to discredit climate science, just as the tobacco industry worked to discredit science that proved tobacco causes cancer. I want to work with my colleagues to call attention to this web of denial. There are organizations out there, they have beautiful names, they're funded by ExxonMobil, they're funded by the Koch brothers, and organizations like Donors Trust, which hides the identities of funders and was called the dark money ATM in the press. Dark money is a good description because the deep pockets of big oil and other special interests have been misleading the American people for many years. As I close my presentation, I want to talk to you briefly about 3 organizations based in my home state: the Reason Foundation, the Pacific Research Institute for Public Policy, and the Hoover Institution. These 3 organizations have been involved in efforts to undermine climate science. The Reason Foundation has been churning out materials to raise uncertainty. The Hoover Institution, which is affiliated with Stanford University, which has so many wonderful things to commend it, but in my opinion, not this, they've been identified by researchers as part of the climate counter movement. And I have great respect for the work that former Secretary of State Charles Schultz and others are doing at Hoover. However, I have to point out many articles published under Hoover's name have created uncertainty about climate science and trying to undermine the need for action. The third organization is Pacific Research Institute, which is a free market think tank that published a number of anti-climate science materials, including the Almanac of Environmental Trends. Just last month, 31 major scientific organizations basically said there is strong evidence that ongoing climate change is having broad negative impacts on society, including natural resources, global economy, human health. And for the United States, climate change impacts include greater threats of extreme weather, sea level rise, increased risk of regional water scarcity, heat waves, wildfires, disturbance of biological systems. And we expect to see this increase. This is what the real scientists are saying. The ones who care about our people, our environment. They don't get their paychecks from big oil. And those who stand to lose if we turn to clean energy. So the scientists who work for that money from the Koch brothers, this is what they say. The world is warming far less quickly than we thought. A little warming will also extend growing seasons. Now consider the dire prediction regarding global warming and think of climate like golf, they write. It's easy to see where the ball has landed, but difficult to construct a model to predict with much confidence where the next ball will land. And we have many other comments by these sham groups that are funded by big oil, by the special interests, just like the tobacco industry had think tanks that supported them. You know, fool me once, okay. Fool me again, I'm going to find out. And we know about these organizations. ExxonMobil gave a total of $381,000 to Reason, $295,000 to Hoover, $615,000 to the Pacific Research Institute. ExxonMobil, foundations associated with the Koch brothers, provided more than $1 million to the Reason Foundation and to the Pacific Research Institute. So we know what's going on here, but there's good news. The American people are not asleep at the wheel. They understand what happened with big tobacco. They understand the phony science that was put forward by big tobacco. And thanks to the leadership of my colleague Sheldon Whitehouse, who's done an extraordinary job, he knows the truth. He knows the truth that these organizations are puppets of the big fossil fuel industry. And you know what? They're going to be found out. And the people already do not in any way support them. And that's why I am optimistic and came to the floor today. The truth will have its day. The people understand. They look out the window and they know. And with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.